It's a funny business. Ask June Whitfield.
One day I was driving to the television centre to do some more Terry and June recording, and there were masses of young kids standing on the, just at the entrance to the television centre. And I thought, well, I know that's not, I thought, I know what it is, Top of the Pops is on, see? Had to be. So as I drove in, there were one or two sort of vaguely smiled, and one of them said, "Oh, look, there's an advert." It was at the time when I was doing a whole series of bird's eye ads, which I thought, it's one way of being recognised, isn't it?
It's hard to believe that over 30 years have elapsed since June Whitfield's long-suffering courtship of Ron Glum was followed by millions of listeners every week on Take It From Here. Yet today she turns up regularly on our television screens, as fresh as a daisy, making us laugh with her enthusiastic and sensitive approach to comedy. It's also a matter of fact that everybody one speaks to in show business has nothing but the highest regard and respect for this talented lady. So join me for the next half hour and share some of her memories, as June Whitfield hopefully proves it's a funny business. I read that you said once, and I always remembered this, the one person you'd like to meet again was your father, because you'd have the chance of having so many more interesting conversations with him.
Absolutely.
And I wondered why you said that. Did he die before you became a big household name?
He died in 1955. I suppose that I perhaps hadn't reached enough of an age of maturity, or whatever you like to call it. And I mean, I know we were on the same wavelength, but we really never seemed to have time to sit down and have long conversations or anything. And I know I would have enjoyed it.
Yes, I'm sure. Did your father have a lovely sense of humour?
Wonderful, really? Wonderful sense of humour. My father, he used to do, I can remember this, my mother was always very, very keen amateur actress. And Dad used to do it, I think, a little bit under, perhaps a touch of duress. Yeah. But where he was so lovely was he wasn't brilliant at learning his lines, but he was terribly good at making them up. Which was a little confusing for the cast at times. But he used to do these wonderful songs. He came from Huddersfield. Yes. And, of course, the Whitfields in Huddersfield, before your time, his brother was very musical, and they had a shop, a piano shop. So he was always, I think, associated with music and musical evenings, in the days when people had to entertain themselves. And Uncle Ronnie played the piano, and he used to do Jonah and the Whale. Yes. And my father always had a monologue of some kind up his sleeve. There was a wonderful one about the chap who, I don't know, he lost the tip of his little finger when he was working in the machine shop, and he got compensation for it. And this whole monologue song thing was, so then I thought, they were all Yorkshire songs, then I thought, this is a way to earn money. So this dreadful song about how gradually he lost more and more bits of himself and lived off the insurance. For years and years and years it was in the piano stool. Yes. And finally, only about a year ago, when we realised we'd had the piano for so long and it had been played by Noel Coward, and I was absolutely loath to get rid of it, except that I don't play, my husband doesn't play, and dear old Uncle Ron is no longer with us, so he doesn't play, so we did finally get rid of it. And that was when I went through the music, and I found Dad's old monologue called The Optimist.
That's lovely.
And it says at the top, instructions to the person who's going to do it: the injuries mentioned in the following verses can be sufficiently indicated by an assumed limp, a thumbless glove, and an empty coat sleeve when performed in character. So you'll have to imagine all that. This song may be sung freely anywhere, excepting theatres and music halls.
Well, we're all right then.
And this is roughly how it went. They call me the chapter of accidents. I'm such a chap to get knocked about. But they don't understand the game, you see. I never gets hurt for nowt. I used to work for a living once till a steamroller smashed me toe. They offered me £25 for that, so I said to myself, oh, ho. And I've haggled for 50 and got it too, and it lasted us half a year. 'Twas worth it, for £50 for a toe with a boot thrown in ain't dear. Now this question I asked myself that day, why work? With a great big query. For I'd 9 toes left to go on with, and I was cheery. Yes, still cheery. So not knowing Euclid or algebra, I did this proportion sum. If my big toe is worth £50, how much shall I get for a thumb? Then to work the thing out, I took a train, and the porter, he slammed the door and smashed me thumb to kingdom come. But I got what I asked, and more. So ever since then, I've lived on myself. It's an independent life, and the only one that grumbles at all is me other half, me wife. She says she married a man, you see, and says it's all Thomas Rot, me trying to live on what I get for what I haven't got. To keep her quiet, I took a job as a handyman at a farm. Then the brokers came in, but the reaping machine quite luckily cut off my arm. They paid me out pretty handsome for that. We've lived on it right up to now. With the help of my self-supporting scheme, I'll get her some more somehow. I've £20 each at my fingers' ends, and there's £20 each for my toes, and I've still 2 legs, 1 arm, 2 ears, and the tip of my Grecian nose. I'll get rid of me ears by auction. They've lately been playing me tricks, and the tip, I suppose, of my Grecian nose should fetch about 7 and 6. I think with a pinch I shall last myself till I'm just about 75, and I reckons it out that that's as long as I'm likely to be alive. If I happen to live to be 80 or so, why, what'll be left? That's the query. Well, if then I'm not dead, I'll part with me head. So I'm cheery, yes, still cheery. Isn't that funny?
I'm not surprised that he actually had a funny daughter, if that's the sort of thing that you listen to.
That was Dad.
Now, I can't let you get away without querying that remark you just threw in so casually that Noel Coward had played your piano.
Well, you see, that was Ace of Clubs when I was in that.
Ah, I see.
And I auditioned for that, for him. Come down here, he said, and talk to me. So I went down into the stalls, and he said, can you do a London accent? So I said, well, don't be daft, I was born in Streatham, is that near enough? And he said, yes, that'll do. And so I joined the company of that, which was, I think, probably, I really did realise that I was lucky to be there, because there was the original man of the theatre. I mean, he knew everything. He could play any part better than anybody else. He directed superbly. He knew all about the lighting. Everything there possibly was to know, you knew. He wasn't called the master for nothing, He really did know it all. And I used to play canasta a lot with Miles Eason and Graham Payne, who was also in the show. And I used to go and play sometimes at Gerald Road. And I'd met Noel Coward. I'd been to parties there, cast parties or something. So one day I decided that I would have a party, and I asked Graham, and I didn't ask Noel Coward because I thought that was a bit saucy, I didn't know him that well. So Graham, so the day before the party or something, he said the master'd like to know if he can come to your party. I said, good heavens, of course he can, you see. And my husband, who's so, much more impressed by cricketers or footballers or something, at the time, he said, bloody rude, he said, to ask yourself to somebody's party. I said, no, it wasn't like that at all, it was this marvellous moment. And he came to the party with Joyce Carey, who I've met many times since.
Isn't she a lovely lady?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful woman.
She is.
Was so funny, too. And Pat Kirkwood was there, and she was singing songs, and so it was a really very jolly evening. And he drifted towards the piano, which was fantastic, of course. And my mother, of course, was absolutely over the moon. She couldn't... So that is 30-odd years ago, so it's taken that long to sell the piano.
Don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage. The profession is overcrowded, and the struggle's pretty tough. And admitting the fact she's burning to act, that isn't quite enough. She has nice hands to give the wretched girl her due, but don't you think her bust is too developed for her age? I repeat, Mrs. Worthington, sweet Mrs. Worthington, don't put your daughter on the stage.
Did I see you many, many years ago in the chorus of South Pacific?
Oh, definitely you
I
did.
did.
Yes, yes.
In your shorts?
In my shorts, yes.
Wasn't there a young Sean Connery hanging about at that time?
Now, Sean, it was absolutely stuffed with people, but my great claim to fame is that I was in it with Larry Hagman when he was in the chorus.
When his mum was playing?
When his mum was playing Nellie Forbush.
That's right.
He was Nobbert a lad, you know. We all were. And I think we were all known as small part players because we each had one line. I think I was Ensign Sue Yeager.
That's right, you were.
I had a name.
Yes, you did.
know.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, there you are, you see.
And I said, Jean Nellie, or something, you know.
As I said at the beginning of the programme, it hardly seems over 30 years ago that you first tried to inveigle Ron Glum in getting married.
It jolly well is, isn't it? It's 50s.
It is.
Yeah.
It's quite staggering,
It's
is that?
quite a while, isn't it?
But like all good comedy, which is all based on relationships and great characterizations, that is as funny today as ever it was.
I absolutely agree with you. When I hear it now, I can listen to it and enjoy it. I mean, at the time, you're so close to it, you know,
Yes,
that you
yes.
don't quite sort of
Yes.
perhaps appreciate how good it is.
Yes.
But listening to it now, it is so funny, isn't it? The writing is so funny, without being filthy or, totally suggestive or anything like that. They are just very lovely, wacky, stupid
Yes.
ideas. I loved it.
How did Take It From Here come into your life?
I really think that they were scraping the bottom of the barrel. I was in love from Judy at the
Yes,
time.
yes.
And I really hadn't listened much to the radio, you know, because I'd been in the theatre for quite a few years, and my radio listening was very confined. I'd hardly ever. So, because I was usually out doing something, you see. So, when I had a phone call one morning, and it said, "This is Muir and Norden," and I did know who they were, and I said, "Oh yes, you know, and I'm the Queen of England," or whatever it was. No, they said, "Seriously, and we'd like you to come and audition for Take It From Here." So I said, "Oh, that sounds jolly nice." I mean, I'd of course heard of Take It From Here, but
Yes.
I'd no idea just how popular or anything it was. I did an audition with Alma. Alma Cogan. We arrived together, and I think we both did reading and singing. And they preferred my reading and they preferred Alma's singing. So that's how it ended up, that we both took over from Joy Nichols.
Yeah.
But when my agent phoned and said, you've been asked to do this, I said, "Oh, fine." And I think in those days, they offered about $5 a week or 10 quid a week. I don't know, something. I said, "Good heavens, I'm not going to do it for that." I said, "I'm getting that in the chorus, you know." What? Good heavens, I said, "on the radio?" Well, and they said, "Well, you do realise, you get repeats." I said, "Well, that's not guaranteed, is it?" I mean, and my agent nearly went mad. Charles Maxwell phoned me up. He said, "You do realise what an opportunity this is?" I said, "Well, I don't really mind about that." I said, And anyway, in the end, through sheer ignorance, I got an extra $5 out of the BBC.
Oh,
so
lovely.
Probably my BBC fee now is a $5 more than it really ought to be. You see,
Yes,
in those
indeed.
early days,
Yes,
because
yes.
they still go back to square one when
Yes,
they're thinking of
yes.
giving you any money. I like the sort of silly ones, like when Eth said to Ron, "Oh, Ron, you've never held your arms around me so tightly before, sweetheart. Whisper to me why." "I'm trying to do up my wristwatch, Eth." It's those sort of silly things that I
Mental pictures,
love.
of
Mental pictures, absolutely. And the time when the bed was pushed across London, and you only realise
Yes.
halfway through it that Mr. Glum and Ron were on the bed and Eth was pushing. I think it's those sort of things that I really don't believe that it's ever worked as well on television.
No.
I mean, we did it
No.
once in The Faces of Jim. We
Yes,
did a
No, pure radio.
a telly, but you lose something. And even the last lot, when Jim, Mr. Glum, was in the bath and he'd got his toe stuck in the tap.
Oh, I
or
remember
something.
that,
Well,
yes,
when you see
yes,
it,
yes.
somehow it isn't as funny. It
No.
can't be as funny
no.
because your imagination can conjure up all kinds of pictures. But when you actually see him there, you think, well, he could get out of that.
Yes,
you
of course. That's absolutely
And all
true.
the muddy water they have to make it decent. You know, it makes a difference.
Did you think when you were doing Eth and Ron, or Ron and Eth, did you think at the time that you were actually taking part in something that was going to become a little classic?
No, of course not. No, I thought that it was. I thought it was great fun to do,
Yes.
and the audiences seemed to like it. But you know, it took about 2 series before people laughed at Ron. It's the same with all comedy. I
Indeed.
think that familiarity does help a bit. It was about 2 series
Yeah.
before they realised they could relax and enjoy it right from the first bit of music, really.
Oh, Ron. It's just so out of the blue. I mean, after all this time. I mean, who'd have thought? Don't you agree, Ron?
No, Eth.
Why not, beloved?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I've told you, Ron, this letter. Here, read the last paragraph yourself.
Show me. Although you are now engaged, I am sure there is no harm in my taking you out to a dinner and dance for old time's sake. Just the 2 of us. What do you say? Yours affectionately, Teddy Perkins. I see.
It's up to you, isn't it?
I suppose it is.
Well,
All right, Eth. I'll go, but I don't think I'll enjoy myself.
Ron, he's asking me.
Yeah?
Look, beloved, perhaps I should have told you about Teddy Perkins before. You see, until you came along, Teddy and I, we were what you might call thick. I mean, he was always round our house. Not that I really thought of him as a future husband, but I think Mum did.
I thought she was already married.
For me, Ron. Then you came into my life, Ron. And when I told Teddy I was getting engaged, he got rather emotional. He said if he couldn't have me, he was going to ignore the call of the flesh altogether and spend his life in contemplation.
What did he do?
I don't know. I believe he moved to Crouch End. And now, after all these years, he invites me out for dinner. Ron, I'm going to ask you something and I want your frank answer. Do you mind your fiancé going out to dinner with a former boyfriend? If you do mind, say so, and I'll understand.
All right, Eth. I do mind.
Well, don't you think that's just a little bit petty, Ron?
All right, Eth. I don't mind.
No, don't let me persuade you. It's quite understandable you're minding my going out with somebody who I was once very keen on.
All right, Eth. I do mind.
On the other hand, it is all over and done with now.
All right, Eth. I don't mind.
Oh, Ron, one moment you say you do and the next moment you say you don't. What does that really amount to?
I think at the moment it's 2 all.
But that doesn't help me. Oh, can't you give me a definite answer?
Quite frankly, I think the original arrangement was best.
What original arrangement?
He takes me out to dinner.
Oh, Ron.
Charles Maxwell was right. It was a great opportunity, wasn't it?
Oh, of course it was. I mean, if I'd realised at the time...
You'd have done it for nothing.
I'd have done it for nothing, exactly. Exactly.
Shall I tell the BBC that?
Too late now. They're paid in.
Having been part of one classic comedy piece of material, namely The Glums,
Yes.
did you ever think that you would become part of another great classic comedy, and that was, I suppose, everybody's favourite Hancock, The Blood Donor?
No, you never think, do you, at the time, that anything you do is going to actually make a mark in history. You can only
But I can never,
realise it
ever
after.
not think of The Blood Donor without seeing you sitting there behind that desk, giving him that
Really?
card and saying, have you had any of these diseases?
Yes. Oh, but then again, that's the writing. I mean, it's really, I was extremely lucky to have been in it. I mean, anybody could have handed in the card and said, have you had any of these diseases? It's one of those fortunate things.
Now, date of birth.
Yes. Yes, shall we say the 12th of May, I always remember the 12th of May. It's Coronation Day, 1936.
You're only 25.
No, the coronation was in 1936. I was born a little before that in is all this really necessary?
Yes, I'm afraid so. The 12th of May.
Yes, I always remember that. The coronation. We all got a day off at our school, did you?
Oh,
We got a cup and a saucer in a box and a bar of soap. Very good. I've still got that, and a spoon for the Silver Jubilee and a biscuit tin with their pictures on.
how old are you?
35.
Thank you. Nationality?
You've got nothing to worry about there. It's blood you're thinking about, isn't it? British. Undiluted for 12 generations. 100% Anglo-Saxon with perhaps just a dash of Viking. But nothing else has crept in. Now, anybody who gets any of this will have nothing to complain about. There's aristocracy in there, You want to watch who you're giving it to. It's like motor oil. It doesn't mix, if you get my meaning.
Mr. Hancock, when a blood transfusion is being given, the family background is of no consequence.
Oh, come now. Surely you don't expect me to believe that. I mean, after all, East is East,
And
really.
blood is blood, Mr. Hancock, the world over. It is classified by groups and not by accidents of birth.
I did not come here for a lecture on communism, young lady.
I happen to be a conservative.
Then kindly behave like one, madam.
Have you had any of the diseases on this list?
Show me. How dare you? No, I have not. And especially that one.
He was a highly nervous character, and as many people have said, he was his own worst enemy. I don't know, I suppose he had a cross between an inferiority complex and what I call a JC complex, on the one hand, he didn't really feel that he was worthy of all the things that were happening to him, and on the other hand, he felt he was better than any of it. A very confusing sort of complex to have, I think.
Yes. Tell me about your time in Rep.
It was very short, really. I did things like sort of 2 weeks at Wolverhampton.
Yes.
And very soon after I left RADA, I did a 10 months tour with Wilfred Pickles in The Cure for Love. And that was at the time when he was absolutely at his peak with
Have a Go.
Have a Go.
Yes.
That was great fun, and we played. I mean, if the boxes in the theatres weren't full on a Monday night, we thought there was something wrong.
Really?
It was that good. I only wish I'd been on percentage, but it was terrific, and great fun. But of course, very time taking. And I did 2 pantomimes with him. I did Cinderella at Leeds, and then the following year Bradford.
Yes.
And the clothing coupons were still going on, and I have this marvellous letter from Francis Laidler enclosing some coupons to buy new shoes for Cinderella's ballroom entrance.
Do you know, I actually saw that pantomime.
Did you?
At
With
Bradford,
Wilfred?
Alhambra, with Wilfred.
Well, you saw me as Cinderella
I
then.
did, didn't I?
Did you remember me at all, Michael, or am I just a dim and distant sort of...
No.
You don't remember me as being the worst thing in the show?
Were you the one that sat near the fire?
Ah, well done.
I
well
remember
done.
you.
I was very naughty, actually, because just about on the last night, I think I was sitting by the fire and I used to say something like, "Alas, poor me, left lonely and forlorn, to sit and wait till they return at dawn." And, you know, sadly, in those bits, there's a little bit of the kids running up and down and eating the oranges and, you know, they're not paying an awful lot of attention. So this day I sat there and I said, "Alas, poor me, left lonely and forlorn, whilst all the others to the ball have gone." And there wasn't a titter, except from me. I absolutely corpsed myself. See? I thought it was hysterically funny, and nobody else really paid any attention at all. It was then I realised that I could have said anything. So I don't think I was compelling.
You've been quite a successful fairy, haven't you, on the pantomime stage?
Well, funnily enough, I started being a fairy in 1982 because they did the first pantomime ever at Chichester at the Festival Theatre.
Oh, lovely.
And somebody asked me if I'd like to be a fairy. I'd never really thought about it before. And Frankie Howard was doing it, who's a great mate. And so I thought, well, why not, you know? And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then they asked me to do it the following year, which was with Roy Hudd at Richmond. And it was really from there that I joined him in the Hudlines.
Yes.
He said, we've tried everybody. I said, well, you haven't tried me. You know? And he said, no, but you have to do an impersonation of Margaret Thatcher or something. So one night in my fairy What's-It, at the, towards one of the end of the scenes,
Yes.
I can't remember the line now, but I did do a sort of thing. And about a month afterwards, my agent rang up and said, would you like to do the Hudlines?
Well, there you are. She does impressions as well. I'd like to thank June Whitfield for being my guest on the programme and hope you'll join me at the same time next week. Until then, Mike Craig saying bye-bye.